Hello and welcome to this podcast episode of G-Talk Ask the Expert. GLP is a leading global investment manager and business builder in logistics, real estate, infrastructure, finance and related technologies. And in Europe claims over 30 years of experience in logistics real estate. Operating in 12 countries with over 4.5 million square metres of logistics space and another 3.4 million square metres awaiting development. They have over 10 billion euros worth of assets under management across Europe. So that's the company. Now let's meet the people. Today I'm lucky to have 3 GLP experts joining me. Welcome to Ofe Kwafo-Akoto, Rachel Walker, and joining us remotely from Hampton, Heidi Klein.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Paul. Hi.
Hello. Well, let's start by asking each of you what your role is within the company and how you got there. So I'll start with you, Rachel.
Sure. Hi. So I'm the General Counsel and Chief Administrative Officer for GLP Europe. So within that,
So counsel, that's in a legal sense, so
Yes.
the legal department.
Yes. But encompassed within the General Counsel role and the Chief Administrative Officer role is essentially leading the strategy on all legal, regulatory, compliance, risk management and governance matters. I also head up our Luxembourg team remotely from London, and I'm responsible for GLP Europe's Marcoms department.
And the Luxembourg team, is that's fund management, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Heidi, how about you? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your role and what you do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I am head of HR for Europe. And basically, I'm responsible for sitting on the senior team within Europe and supporting the business in all HR matters, that be strategic right down to operational, across all our 12 jurisdictions.
Yes, because operating in 12 countries, that must be there must be quite a lot of different sets of regulations across each country.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very different outlook in each of our countries. So it is something that my team and I are always striving to respect and not trying to do that one size fits all. Okay.
And Ofe, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Senior Legal Counsel at GLP in Europe. It's a very broad and varied role. Within that, alongside managing a sub-team within the legal team, I also have primary responsibility for all legal matters relating to a number of our funds and some of our assets on balance sheet.
Okay. Well, welcome to you all. Here in the UK, it's October and it's Black History Month, and we thought this was a good opportunity to discuss what GLP has been doing in the area of diversity and inclusion. So if I could start with you, Ofe, tell us how you joined the company, how long ago, what it was like when you first started, and then what happened last year in 2020.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with GLP Europe now for just over 3 years. So prior to that, I was in private practice. So I was a lawyer at a US law firm. And before that, I trained and I qualified at a UK law firm. When I joined the business, one of the big things that sort of drew me to GLP was just the culture. I felt, a real affinity with the people, the way they were, their demeanour. But yeah, the general culture in the office was very welcoming. I've always felt, really part of our small team. We're quite a close-knit team, even though we've grown in size. With respect to diversity, I think certainly I felt an affinity with those members of the team and outside the business who are ethnic minorities. So one of the things that we've discussed within our team is that sometimes seeing it helps you to achieve it. So I think there was certainly a group of us who are quite close. What's been really encouraging to see is that there's been a lot of organic activity at GLP that has actually centered around diversity and inclusion generally, but also specifically with respect to ethnic minority representation. So even prior to May 2020, we were already, implementing initiatives that spoke to that.
Yes, because May 2020, that was obviously the tragic murder of George Floyd, and then the subsequent public outcry. But you'd already started being involved in some diversity projects prior to that, hadn't you? Tell us a little bit about that one. And was it the Southside Young Leaders Academy?
Yeah, that's right. So we had a discussion within the legal team, just trying to think about things that we could do in addition to our day jobs. And one of the things that we came up with was, working with the community and actually working specifically with this charity. So Southside Young Leaders Academy is a youth charity that focuses on instilling leadership skills in black boys aged 8 to 16 in Southwark and Lambeth. I sit on the board of the charity as a trustee, so I had a personal link to the charity. But, it really was something where within our team and within the business, we felt like it was a good cause and something we wanted to get involved with. So we actually devised our own work experience scheme for the boys, which involved them coming into our offices in Mayfair, working with various functions so that they could understand the work that we do, but then also spending time on site at one of our sites in Lutterworth, and also with one of our customers as well, Wayfair. So we worked in partnership with them to give them time to see the site, get inside a warehouse, see how it all worked. It was a really great scheme that we were able to just get involved in organically.
So a very good induction process for the youth of Southwark and Lambeth.
Absolutely.
But then May 2020 happened, and obviously what happened there? What was the reaction within the company to the death of George Floyd?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, it really started with just individual one-on-one calls. The calls that really stick to mind, they just incidentally happened to be all members of the senior team. But, I had a conversation with Rachel, I think a day or two after George Floyd's murder. We spoke about the Black Lives Matter movement generally, but we also spoke specifically about our team. There are a number of ethnic minorities in our team, particularly at the time. And so we spoke and sort of came together to think of a way to try and address the issue. And one of the key things that we landed on was just having the conversation, opening the dialogue. And that's what we did. We worked on something, but actually it was Rachel who led it, which I think also is something super important, the role of allies and those in senior leadership to actually take on the mantle and start the conversation.
Well, Rachel's here. Do you remember that call? Do you?
No, I do, and I remember sort of obviously thinking, gosh, there's this massive thing that's going on out there, and it must be impacting several members of my team in particular. I think it was impacting everybody, but it must have been impacting several members of the team in particular. But I do also remember kind of feeling slightly hesitant as to how to approach that, because and I think that is something that is quite common within different companies or just generally in society, that there's a slight fear of talking about this sort of thing. So actually, I feel like the collaborative discussion that Ofe and I had at the time was really useful, because I felt, it was something obviously as a team leader I wanted to address, and I really felt it was important to ensure that colleagues within the team felt supported and that they felt able to have an open discussion about it as a team, and that we could all support one another. But I think for me, kind of having that initial call with Ofe, he sort of gave me the confidence that the approach that I was taking was the right approach, and that absolutely we should be open and talk about it. So I remember it really clearly.
And you talked to Heidi as well. Do you remember that call, Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our call, we went into a bit more detail in terms of we were noticing others around us within the industry were really putting out kind of strong public statements, and we weren't. And we started opening up the discussion, not just between ourselves, but between other HR people within our kind of global community around what should we be saying? Should we be talking about this? And actually talking about a lot of tokenism that went around at that time, in terms of people were in LinkedIn, for example, were putting out big statements, but actually when you got behind them, there wasn't necessarily the substance. And I think that really kicked off a big part of our strategy, is that actually whatever we do, however we focus on this, we really want there to be genuine substance behind it, and for it to mean something, and not to step into that world of tokenism that was very much happening at that point of time.
So how did then GLP set about turning that sort of gesture politics and tokenism into actual strategies and policies? What were some of the things that happened, Ofe?
Yeah, I think for me, continuing on the theme of starting with having the conversation, someone else that I spoke with at the time was Nick Cook, who's our CEO in Europe. And he and I had a discussion before he actually then started a discussion at a town hall, and he sort of directly addressed the issue of,
so the town halls are kind of internal kind of corporate meetings.
Exactly.
Is it all senior management or?
It's with all colleagues. And yeah, I thought, again, it was that example of, showing that leadership and setting the tone from the top to say this is actually something that we're looking at and something that we're open to discuss. And yeah, as Heidi also mentioned, we'd seen what, some other companies were doing, and we were thinking actively about what we should do and what our approach should be. And I think that's when Heidi sort of kicked into gear this sort of small subgroup that was focused on diversity and inclusion. And one of the big things that I'm sure Heidi can speak to was that she facilitated the strategy coming together, but she also wanted it to be colleague-led, which is a really big point for us.
Okay. And one of the things then is the kind of collection of data and just, I suppose, a litmus test within a company of how people feel. What was the mechanism for that?
So basically, it's really, really important when we were talking about this tokenism that we wanted this, as Ofe's pointed out, we wanted this to be company-led and people-led. And so Ofe had already shown a strong interest in the topic, and we reached out to other colleagues, and there was another lead involved. And we designed some really straightforward questions around how colleagues are feeling right now. Nothing in major detail, but really understanding who's within our business and what's important to them. And it gave us some really clear takeaways to start focusing on our strategy and what we wanted to do. And I think the clear message that came out that we were okay, but who are we benchmarking ourselves against? Particularly within industry, it's not the brightest outlook. We're not in the best position. We're not the leaders in this industry of when it comes to this topic. And so we then started questioning for ourselves, what do we want to benchmark ourselves? And I think one of the things that's becoming clear is that actually we need to set the new standard within our industry, and we're not necessarily looking for those around us, but looking outside of the sector to see how we can really push the boundaries of what we're trying to achieve.
So, well, then let's look at the actual strategy and some of the initiatives that grew out of that. You've already mentioned the Southside Youth Leaders Academy, but there was another programme that was industry-wide that was coming to the fore called 100 Black Interns. Tell us a little bit about that. Yeah,
so 100 Black Interns was a initiative that I became aware of in, I think it was July or August last year, so a couple of months after George Floyd's murder, and it was very much industry-led. So a couple senior figures within investment and fund management had got together, and they devised this program. And the idea behind it was that they were going to gather all these organizations together, focusing specifically on fund and investment management, industries where there's a lack of representation, particularly when it comes to ethnic minorities, and create these internships over the summer where 100 talented Black students will be able to spend time in these companies, learn about essentially money management. And then the idea is that, it would be an ongoing program, it would proliferate. And actually it's taken off to such an extent that the tagline used to be hashtag 100 Black Interns. It's now hashtag 10,000 Black Interns because so many companies have got involved.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, we're lucky to be joined by one of those 100 Black Interns, Mika Merid. So how did you hear about the programme first?
So I heard about the programme through social media. They had quite an active social media campaign where they got a lot of influential young Black professionals to really advertise the campaign and push it on their social media platforms. So the platform that I found out about it through was Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did you join the program? What happened?
So I joined the program when I was a year out of university. So I applied the year that I graduated. And it was a really interesting time because of course, coronavirus and all these different things were changing and affecting the way in which we work and the way in which we live. So it was just after that season where I was thinking about, life, what comes next after uni and how it all works. So that is when I joined. It was 2000, yeah.
What was your subject?
I studied economics and econometrics at uni. Yeah.
So how much did you know about logistics beforehand?
0%. It was normally coming from an economics degree, especially econometrics. Real estate, in particular logistics, is something that's never really discussed. And even just the subject of real estate is something that's not necessarily brought up. Studying economics will normally push towards a finance route or going into banking, consulting. Those are normally the kind of industries that you're pushed into. So real estate was something that was completely new to me, but something that I was still interested in and something that is still so relevant in society and how the way in which we live and work. Despite the pandemic and COVID, we all need a place to live. And even now we're all coming back to work. So logistics is really important and it plays a big part in all of that.
We're all experts in supply chain economics now. But so what did they have you do? What sort of thing?
Sure. So initially I joined the asset management team and I also spent some time with the fund management team as well. So for the first 3 weeks, I was with the asset management team. I joined in quite an important and busy time of the year where they were preparing for their business plans, which are the plans that are sent to investors, where they really set out all the key metrics and all the business goals that they hope to achieve in the year. So my work was primarily involved with the organisation of that data, just to make sure that all of the data that we have is all up to date. So then that way we can predict the most accurate metrics and put that forward to our investors. So my work mainly involved data consolidation, just making sure we had all of the right things to push that business plan. And that was my time spent with asset management. And on the fund management side, I was involved in, again, a really important part of the business, I guess you could say, just because now everything, as we all know, is moving towards the technological sphere, and every part of the business, well, within every part of the business, we're always looking at things that we can make more efficient and more technological. So I was involved with setting up an online portal, which really streamlined the process of communication with investors and gave them a chance to access information quickly. So I felt really privileged to be a part of that. And I also got involved with some financial modelling as well, which was great. Something that I hadn't had to do in previous internships before, but something that really pushed me. And I was really out of my comfort zone. But once I did it and went through it, I felt so supported and I felt really good afterwards to just be able to learn a whole new skill that I know will come in very handy in the future.
So it has it helped you, you think? Just given you a very good taste of work and logistics?
100%. It's given me a very solid background in real estate and the way in which logistics plays into real estate and the wider society that we live in general. It's also given me a chance to develop my professional skills, develop my personal skills as well, interacting with lots of different departments and different people, seeing how everyone's able to interact and play their part in creating GLP. And it's been amazing so far, yeah, 100%.
And are you, I don't know, are you working for GLP now?
No, not yet. Not officially, but one amazing thing that has come out of this is they agreed to extend my internship, which is amazing. So I was only supposed to be there for 6 weeks, but I felt as though I was in an environment where I was constantly learning new things every day, constantly being challenged in a good way that enabled me to push myself and really learn new skills. So I recognized I was in an environment that I really wanted to stay in. Along with the help of OFE, I put forward a request to stay on for a few more months and continue my internship. So what was only supposed to be a 6-week internship has now turned into a 6-month internship, which is incredible. So yeah, I feel really grateful to be in this position and to GLP as well for allowing me to stay. Yeah.
Well, OFE, any comments on, is that the kind of thing you imagined for an intern program?
Yeah, I think for us as a business, we're quite flexible. We're very responsive. We claim we're innovative, and we show it by responding. Mika struck us as as a candidate, just with, her knowledge, her demeanour, her clear ambition. And so I was hopeful about the internship, or Mika's original internship. And, from the minute she arrived within the business, she made such a great impact across several functions. And so, I personally was very happy to support and endorse her request for an extension. And I think we as a business also valued the work that Mika had done in the first 6 months. And we're also keen to continue to work with her and hopefully, give her greater and different experience going forward.
And as you say, the programme's been very successful. So it's expanded from 100 black interns to how many?
10,000 black interns, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mika.
Thanks for having me.
And
cheers.
All the best for the future.
Thank you.
So internship programmes are a part of a way forward. But what about the wider company? What new strategies are being put in place to help with diversity and inclusion? And if I could ask you that question, Heidi.
So, big part of what we're doing is we really want to take action. So I think, first of all, to kind of step back, when we look at data, it's not just about, we often focus on that diversity piece. So we look at, have we got a diverse workforce and how do we improve that? So in terms of strategies behind that, we're really doing a deep dive into our recruitment policies and pushing the partners that we work with and questioning what their diversity and inclusion policies are looking like, and are we really reaching the full talent pool that we want to reach? So that's kind of at the beginning, if you like, of the journey of making sure and ticking more of that diversity element. We also have identified a number of universities across Europe to not necessarily to bring on interns or work experience, but to allow our colleagues to get in front of future talent, for people to be able to identify, example, particularly in fund management, we don't see particularly many females. So really getting the female representatives that we do have within the business in front of these young people to say, you too could work here. There are females within this industry. So we're looking at where we can get our colleagues on the ground, which actually really, really helps build the engagement piece of internally with colleagues, for them to feel that they're really contributing.
It used to be called the milk round, isn't it? The undergraduate, I suppose, inspiration, and then the potential for recruitment once they graduate.
I think certainly from my perspective, it's been great to see colleagues from across the European regions coming together to, one, engage and just give their views in terms of diversity generally, but how they perceive it to be dealt with at GLP, but then also inputting on future strategy. And, we're still in the process of working that through. We're taking quite a considered approach. We're working with external partners on that. But what I'm hopeful and encouraged by is that when that strategy does then land with the business, that there'll be a lot of people for whom it will naturally resonate with, because actually they've had a real say in the strategy. So I think the approach that we've taken, it has been really key and in some ways, I think, innovative.
Yes, I mean, it was this sort of focus group approach, wasn't it? And making people, as many people as possible, included in the conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's a really, really good example of the inclusion piece. We spoke before of how there is often a big focus on the diversity piece, which has to be there, but it needs to go beyond that. We may create the right environment where there's many different gender, races, nationalities, etc. But it's really therefore important that this is very helpful when we look at the data. Are these people also in the groups that are able to influence and, decision-making roles within the business as well? And I think the actual task force that we're setting up, it's really important that these people are actually able to be influencers in the way in which we run our business.
Yes, it's not just undergraduate recruitment, isn't it? It's at all levels of a company that it's important.
Absolutely.
But it's you're both in the legal team here in the studio, and it's down to the nitty-gritty of also the contracts and what happens there. What are some of the innovations that you've made within that, particularly in is it the tender process that you have?
Yeah, sure. So we recently reviewed all of our asset level external legal partners across all 12 of our jurisdictions. So we ran a process earlier this year, kicking off in April, and it concluded at the beginning of August. And as part of that, it was really important to us as a team, but also to the wider business. It was really important to us that we use that opportunity, and I think indeed we felt a sense of responsibility to use that opportunity and to use our buying power with external law firms to really, seek to make a wider difference than just focusing internally within GLP. So we were looking, in that process, essentially to make a difference within the legal sector, but then also within the wider real estate industry. And so for us, it was about starting the conversation with law firms. And it was something, when we were speaking with them, we were very open and very clear with them that, we're not here to sit and interrogate you on your data or your diversity and inclusion targets, but we want to have a conversation. We want this to be a collaborative effort. We want to see if we can find ways that we can work together to help each other improve diversity and inclusion within our respective businesses.
Okay, and how's that conversation, how's it been going? What's been happening?
Yeah, so I guess it started really with, the raw data. And I think, it's really important to look at that. So as part of the review process that we ran earlier this year, we took a more robust approach than we had done previously. So back in 2015, when we previously reviewed our law firms, we had invited them to use the opportunity to talk to us about what they did in the realms of diversity and inclusion. But this time round, we were a lot more directional. We made it clear that we were expecting to see data. We were expecting to see diversity targets. And from that, we wanted to then find ways to work together to help them, improve in this area. And likewise, we would, as I say, looking at it as a collaborative effort. So in terms of, how we do that and how we sort of help push them forward, I think one of the key things that we're doing is, which actually, works from many angles, but one of the key things that we're doing is that we're saying to our law firms, please don't put a team in front of us unless it's diverse. And as I say, that works from many angles. It works because it's absolutely the right thing to do, but it also works because I don't want a team of external advisors that are all thinking in the same way, that have all come from similar backgrounds. They have the same perspective on issues. I want a team where everybody is looking at something from a slightly different angle. Everybody has a slightly different perspective. And it's really through that diversity of thought that we're going to drive innovation and creativity in finding the strategic solutions that we need for our business.
Well, logistics itself is a global business anyway, and you're already operating in 12 countries. So there is a kind of cultural mix that is essential and important for your business.
Completely agree.
What are some of the other initiatives that you've seen coming out of this conversation with these other legal teams, Ofe?
Yeah, I think for us, we're starting to see the fruits of the work that we've done. So already we've been approached by some of particularly our new external partners, reaching out to us about initiatives that they're putting on and seeing how we can collaborate on those, including some this month during Black History Month. So that's been really encouraging to see that actually already we're starting to have this organic collaboration and discussion with our external partners, which only, draws us closer and helps us just to work better. But as Rachel says, ensures that together we're working to do the right thing.
Well, another sort of contemporary topic, of course, is climate change. We're heading up to COP26 in Glasgow. So ESG stands for environmental, social and governance. We've talked about the governance aspects of some of the legal contracts that you're doing. Environmental is not the subject of this podcast, but social, what can be done in the area of social? Ofe first.
Yeah, so in addition to my role, I also sit as part of our ESG task force. And one of the areas of responsibility that I have is trying to lead efforts in figuring out what we do, what our approach will be with respect to social impact. You know, you touched on it slightly, but I think within the real estate industry, people grapple with this. We're naturally drawn to the E. It makes sense within the built environment.
Embodied carbon and yes,
exactly.
Thermal efficiencies, yes.
Exactly. And I think, with respect to the G, certainly for a business like ours, the way that we structure ourselves is that there are already frameworks in place that, put us in a good position. But I think when it comes to the S and social impact, sometimes, within the industry, we do struggle. But I think at its heart, it's about people, the impact that you're having on people. And, we are looking at it in a particular way. We're looking at our own people, so our colleagues and how we treat them. We're looking at our partners and how we work with them, but also their people. So, some of our customers, we're seeing them, implementing some pretty innovative initiatives with respect to diversity and inclusion, and we're now formulating a way that we can actually collaborate with them on that. And then thirdly, it's about people in the communities within which we impact. So those around us, those around our buildings, our assets, actually how are we positively impacting them? And I think that's really important. It includes CSR, so corporate social responsibility, but I think it also extends beyond that. And there are a couple of things that we're doing just to highlight, I guess. One, I know our UK team in particular have been driving is a dedicated new Centre of Logistics Education and Research, or also known as CLEAR. And this is something that has been developed through a partnership between industry and education. So we've been working hand in hand with a number of universities, and it's set to open at GLP's Magna Park development in Lutterworth. So the idea is that the centre will help the sector to address key challenges with respect to research, innovation, education and training. But, in the context of this discussion on D&I, what it will really do is encourage a new generation to find out about and get into the logistics industry. And that is, real evidence of impacting the community around us and instigating positive social change.
And it's not just GLP, because other companies can also commission research or education programs or training programs at the centre. Exactly.
And, we're working already with one of our supply chain partners on this. So, yeah, it's definitely a collaborative effort. I think
it's part of a consistent pattern with this Centre for Education, and it's going to be located near GLP's big development, Magma Park, isn't it?
Correct, yeah, that's right.
Which is right at the centre of the UK logistics industry. But it's part of that pattern of training programmes and introducing people to the idea of logistics and making sure that you're introducing a diverse panel of people to this industry. Have you got anything to say about the social element, Heidi?
I guess, yeah, absolutely. When we look in kind of from internal perspective, I think we've all spoken about it. Rachel spoke about it. Of part of the challenge is getting people comfortable about speaking about this topic and not having closed doors. So we do a lot of internal social events, and they are absolutely colleague driven. So, for example, we did a cooking event just very recently of African fusion food. And, for some people involved in that may have been the first time they may have experienced things. And it just helps us really understand people at a very, very human level, and for us to have more open communication with each other. So we're really, really encouraging that real basic sharing, actually, of helping people connect with each other on a different level.
Also, that's such a simple thing for everyone to be able to do and to be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very basic, it's just encouraging us getting to know each other.
Conversation, yes. Anything that you want to add, Rachel?
Well, apart from the fact that was, I'm embarrassed to say, the first time that I've cooked plantain, but it's now going to become a regular on the Walker family shopping list. So I think one of the things that we've introduced more recently is a series of charity days across each of our regions. So we have a charities committee that I'd say, again, sort of along the same theme that contribution to charities and giving up time to charities is very much something that is individually led. But at the same time, we do have a charities committee that will try and come up with suggestions and sort of a bit of a steer for people of things that we can get involved in and help with the organisation of that. So more recently, we've been really pushing in each of the regions that each team gives up a day to do something charitable. And I think coming out of lockdown, that's been really well received, actually, because not only are people coming together to sort of do something really good and really helpful and feel like they're making a small difference, but they're also really enjoying spending time together. So it's almost, I find that we're now far more than we ever used to, looking at team building events as an opportunity to give back to communities. And I think that's something that our colleagues have responded really well to.
And that's team building both within the company and with the sort of wider community wherever you're located.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see coming next, Ofe? And what do you hope to see coming next?
Yeah, I think I feel quite hopeful about the progress that we've made and that we're making at GLP. I feel encouraged by the progress that I think we're also instigating within the industry or within industry. So whether that's fund management or real estate. And, I think one of the things that definitely strikes me in terms of the way that we've been able to make positive change is just culture. These positive conversations amongst colleagues, you really get to see that, you really get to see who people are. And it's something that Heidi actually alluded to. And if you're starting from that point where people have the right values, they are open to connecting and engaging on a topic, it's the best place to then drive positive change. One of the things that, we always speak about within certainly our team is our culture and our values. And one of the quite traditional values in GLP in Europe is, that we always do the right thing, not just being seen to do the right thing, but that we do the right thing. I think if you have that sort of culture, it just cultivates an environment where it's far easier to facilitate diversity and inclusion because already people are starting at the right place. And so I think that's one of the things that makes me quite hopeful, certainly within our business.
I'll ask that same question to you, Heidi. What do you hope to see coming next?
For me, I think we have a great environment, as Ofe has alluded to, in terms of our culture, and that's taken a long time to create that. So to continue to improve that, to listen to our colleagues, and then actually as we push this forward, I'm really excited to be able to share this globally because as we look at the world, Europe is much more further forward on this topic and is actually starting to make some really, really positive impacts. So it's something that I'm really excited to share really with our global colleagues across GLP of the good work and the good process we're making on this topic.
And Rachel, any comments from you?
Yeah, I think for me, I share a sense of excitement. I think there's always a sense that things are not changing fast enough, and that I always feel a sense of impatience. But at the same time, I think what really excites me is, the approach that Heidi and Ofe have spoken about of, having all of our colleagues involved in this conversation, all of our colleagues involved in the strategy for moving things forward, because I think it feels like it's been a real step change for us. I think, we've always been a company that does the right thing. We've always had really strong values. But I think when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there have been sort of very many sort of pockets within the business of people that feel really passionate about it, but we've not had this sort of collective coming together and a more sort of formal approach to driving things forward. And I do feel that, with that happening, it has been a real accelerant. And so I'm excited about that step change.
Well, it's very positive then. As we're coming out of COVID and the pandemic, I think there has been that wider sense of integration amongst communities, and both within and outside companies. Well, that's all we've got time for today. And my thanks to our guests, Ofe Kwafa Okoto, Rachel Walker, Mika Merrid and Heidi Klein.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks also to GLP for sponsoring this podcast. And thanks for listening to this episode of G-Talk Ask the Expert. Be sure to subscribe to future episodes wherever you download your podcasts from. And to find out more, visit the website at eu.glp.com and look for GLP Life. My name's Paul Shearer. Thanks for listening.
For moving things forward, because I think it feels like it's been a real step change for us. I think, we've always been a company that does the right thing. We've always had really strong values. But I think when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there have been sort of very many sort of pockets within the business of people that feel really passionate about it, but we've not had this sort of collective coming together and a more sort of formal approach to driving things forward. And I do feel that, with that happening, it has been a real accelerant. And so I'm excited about that step change.
Well, it's very positive then. As we're coming out of COVID and the pandemic, I think there has been that wider sense of integration amongst communities, and both within and outside companies. Well, that's all we've got time for today. And my thanks to our guests, Ofe Kwafa Okoto, Rachel Walker, Mika Merrid and Heidi Klein.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks also to GLP for sponsoring this podcast. And thanks for listening to this episode of G-Talk Ask the Expert. Be sure to subscribe to future episodes wherever you download your podcasts from. And to find out more, visit the website at eu.glp.com and look for GLP Life. My name's Paul Shearer. Thanks for listening.